This year, ESO is seeing some serious changes to the Magicka Necromancer, including a complete rework of their core AoE skill called Stalking Blast Bones. Now, while this change might have a big impact on a typical Magicka Necromancer build, it actually makes one build in particular even stronger, allowing you to pump out insane damage with a single button and have nearly infinite sustain, while also having some great options for self-healing and even group utility. That is the build that we're going to look at in today's video, the solo 1-bar Mag Necro. This is by far the easiest Necromancer build you can play right now in ESO, and it's extremely powerful. So enough talking, let's get right into the build. All right, everybody, here we are back on the Magicka Necromancer with an update for the Elder Scrolls Online. Yes, this is our easy 1-bar Mag Necro setup, and yes, it is actually easier and more powerful than previous versions of the build. So let's go ahead and jump right into the stats here and see what we're looking at. So we've got about 31k max Magicka, nice health pool, about 28k max health, and 18,000 max stamina, so very strong stats overall. We have great recoveries as well with our Guardian buff active. 1,300 mag recovery, 1,900 health recovery, 1,100 stamina recovery. Weapon and spell damage are looking good. Crit chance is also very strong, and great armor and penetration on this build as well. In terms of attributes, obviously we're focusing on the Magicka here, so 64 points into Magicka. You can buff your health even more if you're doing something like an Infinite Archive solo run. That'll be helpful. In terms of the Mundus stone, I do recommend using the Thief Mundus in this case for the extra crit chance. Don't forget we have bonus crit chance as a Necromancer. That actually got buffed this patch as well. So we're going to be sitting on a very high crit chance, especially in execute range. Now, in terms of consumables, we do want as much max stats as possible, including our stamina, even though this is a Mag Necro build technically. So Bewitched Sugar Skulls is a very good option for that. Not only does this give you tons of max stats, but also a bit of health recovery, so that's nice as well. And in terms of the potion, since we have so much sustain on this build, you can run something interesting here, like the Essence of Health that gives you armor. This actually gives you sort of a mini burst heal. It gives you bonus health recovery, the major fortitude buff, and also 5280 spell resistance and physical resistance. This is going to be really good for more difficult content. Like I said, if you want solo in the Infinite Archive, this is just free armor that you can add to your build. So it's a nice option. I'll have more details on that in the written guide. You can check out the link in the description for the full recipe on that one. But then finally, in terms of the race, I did go again with Khajiit for this version of the Necromancer. Couple of reasons: you get bonus recovery, you get more max stats, which is good, and then the bonus critical damage and critical healing. With our crit as high as it can get on the Necromancer this patch, this is nice, especially if you're playing solo. But this is really just personal preference. I mean, any race, this build is so strong that pretty much any race is going to be completely fine. All right, so that's the basic setup. Let's check out the sets next. And not a lot has changed here, honestly. I did try a few different versions of this build, and these sets are still extremely powerful for the heavy attack setup with the 1-bar build. Of course, we're talking about Sergeant's Mail. We've got the Lightning Staff of the Sergeant. This is going to boost our heavy attacks by 645 per stack, up to 4 stacks. So this works best on a 1-bar build. That way you're always doing your heavy attack. You're always going to keep those max of 4 stacks up, and it is a huge bonus. Now, I think the best way to run this, because it is a heavy armor set, is to do the Lightning Staff. So that's 2 pieces right there, since it's a 2-handed weapon. Then do a heavy chest. I actually kept the max health on that. I think it's better for Infinite Archive. And then just 2 pieces on the jewelry. So we're using a necklace and a ring of the Sergeant, and I've got those both in Arcane. You could also do Bloodthirsty, you could do Infused. Something like that to increase your damage is going to be a good option. With the spell damage glyphs on jewelry, we're going to want all 3 of those being spell damage. But that is, again, our primary set for the heavy attack focus build. Second set is also buffing heavy attacks. Noble Duelist is another base game set, pretty easy to get. It comes from dungeons, but the nice thing about this is it gives us even more heavy attack damage, about 2100 added to your light and heavy attacks against monsters. It's a nice long buff. It lasts for 15 seconds, and it's extremely easy to proc You just need one enemy in melee range, which if you're playing solo, you're going to have that pretty much all the time anyways. Now, it also boosts our damage, and we get some stamina recovery, which when we get to the skills, you're going to see why that is useful on this particular build as well. Now, another nice set you can consider, especially if you know you're not going to be in melee range, if you're doing some specific, maybe group content, Rune Carver's Blaze. This set is going to be extremely powerful moving forward in ESO as well. Your damage over time effects deal additional flame damage. Obviously, this can proc the burning status effect, which is going to be nice on this particular build since we don't really have any other fire damage. So you may want to pick up this set as well. Like I said, this is going to be a nice option if you want to be fully ranged on your heavy attack Necromancer. But that is pretty much it, except for, of course, a very important piece that we're going to need for the heavy attack build for the 1-bar setup. That's going to be the Oaken Soul Ring. This mythic item gives us tons of buffs, as you can see. Here we get armor, here we get damage, extra healing, minor protection, and probably the most important of all is the Empower buff that's going to increase the damage of our heavy attacks. That's really the best reason to run the Oaken Soul on a heavy attack build. If you don't have this by now, I'll have a link down below for our Oaken Soul Ring guide. Make sure you pick this up, especially if you're interested in the 1-bar playstyle. So with those 5 pieces of Noble Duelist on the body, feet, legs, hands, waist, shoulders, that's going to give us just 1 piece left. You can use any 1-piece monster set that you want. In this case, I'm using the Slime Cross set for a little bit of extra crit chance. Light on that, you could also run medium if you want. It really doesn't matter. And then, like I said, max Magicka on our armor pieces. You can run a couple of health pieces, especially if you're doing Infinite Archive. That's a good idea. And then Divines is going to be the trait that you want for all of that armor. But that is the setup. If you'd like to see more details, other alternate sets, make sure to check out the written guide. Again, link for that is going to be in the description. But let's check out the skills next and see how simple this really is. Now, I talked in the intro about the main change to Magicka Necro moving forward in ESO. That's Blast Bones is now Gravelord's Sacrifice. Now, this is specifically for the Magicka Morph. Stamina Morph didn't change all that much, but Magicka Morph is very different. You can see this is almost a self-buff now. This lasts for 20 seconds, and it increases your damage done with class abilities and damage over time effects by 15%. Now, the key there, obviously, class abilities, those are going to get a nice buff, but also damage over time effects get buffed by 15%. And this counts for the Destruction Staff, specifically Lightning Staff heavy attacks. Each tick of the damage over time, so those initial ticks that you see with your Lightning Staff heavy, get the 15% bonus while this buff is active. Now, we have tons of other buffs focusing on heavy attack damage as well. You saw the sets already. We'll talk about champion points, a couple of other important things that we're doing, but this basically is why the heavy attack Necro is going to be one of the best heavy attack classes moving forward because you get this additional damage. Obviously, this is going to buff our other Necro abilities that we're using, but it is pretty interesting. It creates a Corpse on Death as well, so you can use this with a Siphon, for example, and some other abilities. So yeah, I did try this out on the heavy attack setup. I think it's a great buff for that particular playstyle, so I definitely recommend you try it. That comes from the Gravelord skill line. By the way, that's the second ability, and that's the new Magicka Morph. It's called Gravelord's Sacrifice. Now, next up, we've got a AoE ability. This is going to be important, not just for the AoE damage, but AoE Major Breach, so it's going to reduce the armor of all the enemies in the area, which is very helpful for clearing through trash, for getting quickly through Infinite Archive. This is pretty nice. It also consumes a corpse, so you can get some bonus damage for that. There's also a synergy for group play, so it's a very nice ability overall. I wish the duration was a little bit longer. 10 seconds does feel pretty short. And obviously, if you're just in a single target fight, the AoE damage is going to be kind of wasted. Sometimes the fact that this consumes a corpse, that can get in the way of our other healing abilities that use corpses. So for a straight single target fight, I probably would swap this for Destruction Staff. Would probably use either Elemental Drain or Elemental Susceptibility. Again, just for a single target though. For fighting multiple enemies, I definitely would use Unnerving Boneyard. The next up is going to be a Flex Spot, and this depends if you're running solo, easy or difficult content, or group content. So for more challenging solo content, I definitely would run a heal in this position. Mortal Coil is very powerful. This is a healing over time skill that also gives us Magicka and stamina sustain, and it also increases our healing done by 3%. This comes from the Living Death skill line. That's our second to last ability there. So I've had the most success running Infinite Archive with this heal, especially as you get to the later arcs. You do want some extra healing. Now, if you're focused completely on damage, obviously you wouldn't run that. You could run something like Detonating or Mystic Siphon from the Gravelord skill line. It's going to give you even more AoE damage over time. Of course, that'll get buffed by the new Gravelord Sacrifice, so that's going to be a good option for more damage. Now, speaking of damage and damage that heals you back, let's talk about our main sort of spammable ability, especially for emergencies, and this is Ruinous Scythe. Now, yes, this is a stamina ability. That's why I am running the Tri-Stat food to get the stamina so high on this particular build. But this skill does so much that it's great for a heavy attack build. Now, it does bleed damage. It applies the hemorrhaging status effect. It also sets every enemy that you touch with this off balance. What's the good thing about off balance? Enemies that are off balance actually take a ton of bonus damage from heavy attacks. That's sort of the way it's set up. And also, if you heavy attack an off balance enemy, that enemy gets stunned. So there's a lot of utility that comes from this particular skill. Now, for more challenging content as well, you can see you get the heal, sort of a mini burst heal, about 5k there, but for each additional enemy hit, 1600 more health. So if you're hitting, 4 to 5 enemies, this is easily a 10k heal, and it's going to crit upwards of 20k with our crit damage on this particular setup. So this is really the secret to surviving really difficult content, is you're going to save this, obviously, to debuff enemies and apply these status effects, but it is a burst heal, and the more enemies that you hit with it, the higher the healing goes. So it is extremely useful. Definitely recommend you use this particular skill on the heavy attack setup. And then we just got our main heal from Living Death. This is called Spirit Guardian. Not only does this heal you every 2 seconds, it also reduces your damage by 10%, creates another corpse, so it's helpful for our siphoning abilities. But yeah, I would recommend this pretty much in all versions of the build. Unless you're playing with a dedicated healer, you could do another damage skill here as well. In that case, I would run something like the Skeletal Mage or the Skeletal Archer, depending on if you want more AoE or more dot damage. That could be your final damaging skill. Now, in terms of the ultimate here, pretty simple. Glacial Colossus is what I like. This does good damage. It also applies major vulnerability for quite a long time now, 17 seconds. I believe this got increased. But it's also great for the stun, for content where you're trying to clear things quickly. If enemies are stunned, they're not damaging you, so it's very effective for clearing through crowds. The cost is also lower now too, 175 ultimate, so it's pretty easy to get this back quickly. But that is the setup. Like I said, if you want to see more details on that, check out the written guide of all the alternate skills listed there as well. So now I just want to show you sort of how everything works when you're dealing damage and all the different bonuses that we have. So obviously we have our heavy attack sets. We have Sergeant's Mail and Noble Duelist, and those are going to stack up after about 4 heavy attacks. You should be at max damage. And like I said, as long as you're in melee range, you're going to have these stacks up 100% of the time. So we can see I'm doing about 22k. That's the dot damage in orange there. If it crits, and about 12k if it doesn't crit. That's our basic heavy attack damage, right? So now when I apply Gravelord Sacrifice, we should see a nice buff to that. Takes a few seconds to activate. There we go. So now I'm getting 14k non-crits and about 20k, 25k crits. So you can see that did go up quite a bit. So let me go ahead and keep that up. And then we're going to activate our off balance. Just that final buff. It's giving us 18k non-crits now. Over 33k crits. And again, we're just looking at the orange, the damage over time, because that's what's being affected by Gravelord Sacrifice. Off balance affects both the dots and the final tick, which is direct damage. So that's really nice too. But you can see basically just doing heavy attacks. I've got this target dummy down to 25%. Really easy. In terms of your other abilities, it's just maintaining your buffs. Right? You can maintain your Spirit Guardian, your Mortal Coil if you want the bonus healing. Keep refreshing the Boneyard. and then make sure to apply off balance like that with your scythe. And it's simple, you guys. Very simple and effective. All right, let's talk champion points next, and we can see where we're getting some more of that power for heavy attack builds here as well. But just really quickly, green tree. These are the kind of basic stars I typically use on a build. So I'll start with Steed's Blessing. Then I'll come up here, Treasure Hunter, Rationer, and Liquid Efficiency. Those are the 4 slotted stars I recommend there. Now in the blue tree, something that you'll want to pick up right away. It's actually in this sub-constellation, and it's called Weapons Expert. This is very important to pick up for a heavy attack build, especially with the Lightning Staff. So 20% total heavy attack bonus damage here with Weapons Expert. So that's going to be good for number 1. After that, I would go with Thaumaturge. This is going to improve the damage over time components of your heavy attack. Deadly Aim actually improves the direct damage, so that last hit of damage is going to get improved there. And then for one more, since we do have such high crit chance, especially in execute range, Fighting Finesse is going to be a good option here as well. And don't forget, there are defensive stars you should pick up always in the blue tree, especially here. Quick Recovery, Preparation, this gives you 10% damage reduction. Now finally, in the red tree, we've gone with a pretty basic setup, going with Rejuvenation for the recovery, Fortified for the armor, and Boundless Vitality for the health. But for my 4th star, I went with something interesting here. Bloody Renewal restores stamina. Okay, now why would you want that? Well, remember I talked about the burst heal and the AoE off balance from our scythe. That ability costs stamina. So if you want to sustain that more 100% of the time, putting those points into Bloody Renewal, you'll actually get a ton of stamina back. When you kill those groups of enemies, you'll basically be back to full stamina. So the next wave that comes in, you can do even more scythes to apply off balance and that burst heal. So that's just what I have found works best for me. Again, for soloing dungeons, Infinite Archive, where you have lots of ads coming in, this is going to be a very good option to help you sustain the build. But that's pretty much what I recommend. Now, if you want to see this broken down into 300, 600, 900 and 1200 champion point levels, check out the written guide. I've got everything broken down there for you, so it should be pretty easy to follow. Last but not least, if you're curious about the outfit style, we can look at that. I believe this is actually a costume. Yep, this is Sadrith Mora formal attire, and I'm mixing this with a skin. That's going to be the Black Marrow Necromancer. Everybody, thanks again for watching this video. If you found it at all helpful or informative, do me a huge favor and crush that like button so YouTube knows to share this video with others. By the way, we are continuing to roll out members-only videos here on YouTube, and if you like the Necromancer, then you'll definitely love our unique Stam Necro build, the Unkillable Death Knight. We just rolled out a newly updated version of this one, incorporating all the new Necromancer changes, and it too is even stronger than ever. So if you're interested in unlocking even more unique builds and guides like this for ESO, just click on the join button down below and click on the Elite Squad option, which gives you even more exclusive videos and guides, members only Discord, and more. A big shout out as always to our amazing channel members who keep this channel going. Could not do this without you. And thanks again to all of you for watching this video, and I'll see you around in the next one.